Question 1, Part A. Use all digits 5609 to form the largest 4-digit number. So in this case, pretty straightforward. We go from largest to smallest. So largest is 9. Then second largest would then be equal to 6. Then third largest would then be equal to 5. Then the last one, smallest, then be 0. So the thing is that you might be thinking 9650, but we are looking for odd number. So when we're looking for odd number must be not be divided by 2. So in this case, if you put 9650 divided by 2, then we actually can divide by 2, 4825. So this one cannot be the one. Okay, because odd number cannot be divided by 2. So that means, not cannot, but odd number can odd number cannot be divided by 2 without a remainder. So in this case, then we will switch it up to 96. Then third number, let's put 0. And the last number, we will just switch up the third and last number to be 9605. So let's try it out. 9605 divided by 2. And this will give us 480.25. So that means this is, of course, 48.02. And then I will say remainder 1. Okay. So in this case, this is correct. Okay, because odd number when divided by 2 gives a remainder. So that's why we just swap the 2 digits earlier. So the answer is 9605. Question 1, Part B. Use all the digits to form the number closest to 6,000. So the number closest to 6,000 would then be pretty close. So it will be 58999. So the closest number to 6,000 is equal to 5999. Yep. So with that said, then we can start off. This will give us a hint on what to start first. So we know that it is 59, but then we don't know the other two numbers, 59 something something. So in this case, it's either 5906 or 5960. So we need to choose the bigger number as it is closer to 6,000. Therefore, closest to 6,000 is 5960. There you go. So that's the answer, 5960. Question 2. Cupcakes are sold in boxes of 6, 12, or 24. Sam buys 90 cupcakes. What is the least number of boxes Sam buys? So least number of boxes Sam buys. So that means we need the smallest number of boxes. And to get smallest number of boxes, I think I repeat this, but we need each box to be the largest. Example, 3 boxes of 30 cupcakes is equal to 90, total 90 cupcakes. So in this sense, 24 cupcakes in one box is the highest. So that means number of 24 cupcakes in one boxes of 24 cupcakes then be equal to 90 divided by 24, and this will give us 3 remainder 18. So remaining cupcakes is equal to 18. So with boxes of 12 and 6, we can create one box of 12 plus one box of 6, which will give us 18 cups. So total boxes is equal to 3 boxes of 24 plus one box of 12 and one box of 6. In this case is 5 boxes. So there you go. So the answer is 5 boxes. Question 3. A shelf can be packed from end to end with 30 large books or 45 small books. Having already packed the shelf with 3 large books and 23 small books. And most, how many more large books can Kevin pack the shelf with? So the shelf itself can do 30 books, 30 large books, and the shelf can also contain 45 small books. That means since the shelf is the same, 30 large is equal to 45 small. Okay. So it says here, Kevin already packed the shelf with 3 large books and 23 small books. So that means the current books is equal to 3 large plus 23 small. So in this case, we can convert 3 large into small book. Okay, since we know 30 large is equal to 45 small, then if we divide each by 10 and divide this by 10, that means this is 3 large equal to 4.5 small. Therefore, this current books 3 large plus 23 small will then be equal to 4.5 plus 23, which is 27.5 small. So now what will be the remaining small books will then be, since we know the shelf can contain 45 small books, so 45 small minus 27.5 small, and this will be equal to 17.5 small books. So how do we then convert 17.5 small books to large book? So from earlier, we know that 30 large is equal to 45 small, and then 45 small is equal to 30 large. Okay, and then 1 small will then be equal to 30 out of 45 large. In this case, divided by 15, this will be 2 out of 3 large. So that means 17.5 small will then be equal to 2 out of 3 large times, or 17.5 times 2 out of 3. This will then be equal to 11, 2 out of 3. So at most, curly brackets, so at most will be 11 large books. There you go. So that's the answer, 11 at most. Question 4, part A. Students played one sport, basketball, football, or handball. 1/3 of them played football. The number who played handball was 1/2 of the number who played basketball. The bar graph represents the number of students who played each sport. Label the bar graph by writing B for basketball, F for football, and H for handball in the blanks below. So in this case, 1/3 of them played football and half of the number played, and the number who played handball was half number of what do you call this? Was half the number who played basketball. So let's say total in terms of units for people, students here is 3 units, and then football is equal to 1 unit. 1 unit. Okay, so from the statement here, the number who played handball was half of the number who played basketball. So handball is equal to half of basketball. And then from here, half of basketball of means you multiply. And then what is basketball? We don't know. So the thing is that from football over here, the remaining, in this case, which is the handball plus basketball, is equal to 2 units. So when it says the number who played handball was half of the number of players who played basketball. So that means handball 1 part and basketball is 2 parts. So from here, the remaining handball 2 units, and then we know handball plus basketball equal to 1 plus 2 equal to 3 parts. Therefore, see that the remaining over here, so 2 units equal to 3 parts, and then 3 parts is equal to 2 units. So 1 part is equal to 2 divided by 3 units. So in this case, handball, since it's 1 part, then that means it is 2 out of 3 units. Then for basketball, it's basically, so this is 1 times 2 out of 12. Then for basketball will be 2 times 2 out of 3, which is 4 out of 3 units, or this case is equal to 1 out of 1/3 unit. So from here, can we guess which one is the biggest? So basketball is 1/1/3 units. Handball is 2/3 of the units. And from football is 1 unit. So therefore, the biggest over here is actually basketball. The second biggest is football with 1 unit. And the third one is handball with half unit. Football in unit. I want to go down here, football 1 unit. Okay, so therefore, and yeah, this is how you answer this question. So for part B, what fraction of the students played handball? So we know that handball is 2 out of 3 units, and then the total is how many units? If you go up, it's 3 units. So therefore, handball fraction is basically handball divided by total. And in this case, handball is 2 out of 3 divided by 3. 2 over 3 times 1 over 3. This will be 2 over 9. Okay, so there you go. So that's the answer for handball fraction. Question 5, part A. The graph showed the total number of cards machines A and B printed from the start. Both machines started printing at the same time. How many more cards did B print than A in 5 minutes? So first thing is we need to figure out what is the rate for A and B. So in this case, let's zoom this in. Let's go to A. So A over here, we know that the time in minutes, it's actually 5. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to put in rate and 40 as the number of cards that's printed in 5 minutes. So machine A in 5 minutes printed out how many? 40 cards. All right, so the next one is where it gets a bit tricky. So in this one, machine B, this is machine B, has 2 minutes and it produces 30 cards. So machine B, I'm going to put here 2 minutes is equal to 30 cards. So from here, we need to find out what is the rate in 1 minute. 1 minute is 30 divided by 2 is 15. However, we need to find out in 5 minutes. So 5 minutes will then be equal to 5 times 15, and this will be equal to 75 cards. So from the question, how many cards did B print than A in 5 minutes? So I think it's pretty straightforward. The difference will then be equal to 75 minus 40, and this will be 35 cards. Okay, there you go. So the answer is 35 cards. So question 5, part B. When A had printed 200 cards, how many cards had B printed? So essentially, this whole thing is, you need to break down what this question is trying to say. When A printed 200 cards, we need to break it down, right? How many minutes did A spend? So earlier, we know that 5 minutes, okay? So 5 minutes is 40 cards, so we can reverse. I'm gonna put machine A like this. So we know that 40 cards is equal to 5 minutes. Then 200 cards would then be equal to 5 divided by 4 times 200. Okay, so in this case, it's the same as you were to have one card equal to 5 divided by 4. So I usually just do this case. And 1 card to 200, just multiply by 200. So 5 divided by 4 times 200. Sorry, not 4, 40, right? 40. So 5 divided by 4 times 200. This would then be 25 minutes. So that means the question then is, in 25 minutes, how many cards did B printed? So essentially, when A printed 200 cards, how many cards B printed? This question is asking the time A takes to print 200 cards, how many cards B printed? Okay, so with that said, we know from the previous part, machine B in 1 minute can print 15 cards. So that means 25 minutes will then be equal to 25 times 15, and this will give us 375 cards. There you go. So that's the answer for question 5B. Question 6, part A. A florist sold flowers from 8 to 1600 last Sunday. The line graph shows the total number of flowers sold from 8 or 0800. What time had the florist sold half the total number of flowers sold that day? So in this question, we need to know how many gaps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in this case, 5 gaps is equal to 25. 1 gap is equal to 25 divided by 5. This will give us 5. Now we want to know the number of flowers. So at what time did the florist sold that day? So essentially, we need to know the total number of flowers. So from here, we can just look at this. So the total number of flowers, we to look at this part, which is at 1600. And then this will then be equal to 75 plus 1. That means 75 plus 1 times 5. This will give us 80 total number of flowers sold. Okay. So when it says sold half, so half of total number of sold, then be 80 divided by 2, which is 40. So we need to find the number 40. So how do we find the number 40? Is you can go through, or you can see 50, right? 50 over here is very close to 40. So you can just count 1 and 2. And then from here, you can see that 2 gaps below 50 in this case is 40. So work from this, and let me put this in where 40. And then it hits to this timing, which is timing of 1000. So 1000 is equal to 40 flowers. So the answer is 10,000. So question 6 part B. During which 1 hour interval was there no flower sold? So when you see this kind of question, so in a graph, you should see a straight line. So do you see the straight line? I think you probably can see it. So it's from 1400 to 1500. So in this case, this is what we get. So the straight line that D from the graph, or straight flat line, if that, let me just say this is in blue, then you can see that the timing is the straight line, straight flat line D is from 1400 to 1500. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer at 1400 to 1500. So question 6 part C. What was the average number of flowers sold per hour from 1100 to 1600? So to find the average number of flowers sold, so flowers sold from 1100 to 1600 hours. So for 1100, it is 45. 1600, it is, I think we know this in the earlier parts, it is 80. So in this case, it's 80 minus 45, and this will be 35. So note lowers are flowers sold per hour. So how many number of hours between 1100 to 1600 is equal to 1600 minus 1100. This will give us 5 hours. 5 hours. So average will then be equal to 35, which earlier, divided by 7. This is 7 or 5, sorry, 5 equal to 7 flowers per hour. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. 7. Question 7. ABCD is a rhombus and EFG is an equilateral triangle. DGH is a straight line. Find the angle Y. Okay, so for find angle Y, what is angle Y shape part of? Angle Y shape part of is this shape over here. So there isn't any letter, so I'm going to put here letter I. So angle Y is part of triangle. There's I. There's no more thing here. I'm gonna put here I, J, here. So it's part of triangle EGJI. Next is, since this is part of this triangle, then the next thing is we need to find 2 other angles. The 2 other angles is JEI and JIE. So that means angle Y is equal to 180 minus angle JEI, which is purple, and minus angle JIE is green. So for this, how can we find this purple angle over here? So this purple angle is actually part of this triangle, which is EFG, like so. And what is EFG? So EFG, so angle JEI, purple triangle, is equal to 60 because it's angle in equilateral triangle EFG. Okay, so now we know that JEI is 60. The next part is how do you find this green angle? So this green angle is part of, or is a vertically opposite angle, which is this part. So JIE is equal to angle DIG. It's also in green. And for this green angle over here, it is part of this green triangle, which is DGI. So that means angle DIG is equal to 180 minus 2 other angles. So the 2 other angles is this pink one and this blue one over here, which is angle IGD, which is in blue, and minus angle IDG, is in pink. So for angle IGD, which is in blue, how do we get this angle? So this angle over here is actually part of a straight line. So the straight line over here look something like this, which is this part. So we know this IGD is blue, is 180 minus, we have 96, minus this other angle. So this other angle is EGF. So EGF is this purple angle. can you guess what this purple angle is? So minus, it is an equilateral triangle, which is 60 as well. Put 60 over here. So minus 60. So in this case, angle EGF is equal to 60 because it's angle in a equilateral triangle. So that means IGD will then be equal to 24 degrees. Oh, I see over here. So now we got the blue angle. You just need to find this last angle over here, which is this. Okay, I mean, we need to find this angle over here to find the green angle. So this pink angle over here, how do we get it? So this pink angle is equal to 360 minus 155 minus, and then you see CDA. CDA is, I'll give this a light blue one. I'll just put the light, okay? Angle CDA. So that means angle CDA, which is in light blue. What is it? So angle CDA is basically part of this rhombus. Is this, and one more, this. So the rhombus ABCD. Angle CDA, light blue, is part of the rhombus ABCD, which means angle CDA is equal to angle ABC, which means it's also equal to 102 degrees because opposite angles in rhombus are the same. So which means this is 102. Therefore, we can actually find the green angle that we wanted earlier. Oh, sorry, the pink angle that we wanted earlier is 360 minus 155 minus 102, which is equal to 103. So now we just need to work backwards. So to get a green angle, it's basically 180 minus IGD, which is blue, 180 minus 24 minus 103, and this will give us 53 degrees for the green angle. And since this is 53, that means this other green angle is 53. And since we know this green angle, that means we can find angle Y, which is basically 180 minus 60, which is the purple one, minus 53. And this will give us 67 degrees. There you go. So the answer is 67 degrees. Question 8, part A. Cindy bought 2 fans of the same model at a sale. She paid $127.50 for them. What was the price of a fan before discount? So the easiest way, whenever you see this kind of question, is to let one fan be 100 units. 100 units is the easiest number of units for you to calculate. So when you see this statement, buy first fan at 55% discount, that means first fan in terms of units would then be equal to 100 units times, so this is after discount. Third is 100 minus 55%. Okay, and in this case, this will give us 45 units. Then the next one, buy second fan at 70% discount. So that means for the second fan after discount in terms of units would then be 100 minus 70%. So this will give us 30 units. So therefore, first plus second fan in terms of units will then be equal to 45 units plus 30 units. And this will be 75 units. And the thing is that we paid $127.5 for them. So that means first plus second fan is equal to $127.50, which means that 75 units is equal to $127.50. So 1 unit will then be 127.5 divided by 75, and that will be equal to $1.70. That we know the original price. So let one fan be 100 units. So that means 100 units, which is fan for discounts, will then be 100 times 1.7, and this will be $170. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer, $170. Question 8, part B. Nick also bought 2 such fans at the price before discount. How much more did Nick pay than Yi? Since we know the original price is 170, so that means Nick will then be 2 times 170. This will be $340. So difference will then be 340 minus 127.5, and this will give us $212.50. There you go. So that's the answer, $212.50. Question 9, part A. The bar graph shows the number of files sold from January to March. The number of files sold is not shown on the scale. What was the percentage decrease in the number of files sold from January to February? So let's have one gap, be 1 unit. So in terms of January over here, we just count the number of gaps. In this case over here, would then be equal to 5, 10. If you were to calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that means this is 5 units. This is 10 unit. Means for January, it's equal to 12 units. Then for February, equal to 9 units. So that means the difference is equal to 12 minus 9 to be 3 units. So what was the percentage decrease? Would then be difference divided by January times 100%. Essentially 3 divided by January is 12 times 100. Then this will be 25. Okay, there you go. 5%. Question 9, part B. There were 144 more files sold in March than in January. How many files were sold in March? We need to find January and March. So we already know from the last question, January is 12 units. Then for March, what to just see here, this is 10 units. This will be 15 units. So March over here then be equal to 16 units. So that means the difference would then be equal to 16 minus 12, which is 4 units. Then this is difference in terms of units. And then from the question, it says there were 144 more files sold in March than January. So that means the difference would then be equal to 144. So in that case, since the difference are the same, 4 units is equal to 144. So 1 unit would then be 144 divided by 4. This will equal to 36. And then how many files are there in March? So March over here is 16 units. So 16 units will then be 16 times 36. This gives us 570. There you go. So that's the answer. So question 9b, part 2. The average number of files sold from January to May was 435. What was the average number of files sold in April and May? So from here, it's continuation from the previous part. So the average number of files sold from January to May. So that means the total will then be equal to, so we have number of months from January to May. In this case is January, February, March, April, May. 5 months. So that means total will be 5 times 435. This will be 2,175. So what was the average number of files sold from April to May? So from this, what we need is average of April and May would then be total of April and May divided by 2. So how do we get the total of April and May? In this case, we have the total minus January minus February minus March. Okay, so how do we find January, February, and March? So we know January. So we know 1 unit is 36. Okay, and we also know March is 16 units. Then what about January and February? So January and February is, according to this, 12 units and 9 units. So we can just add them up. So 12 times 36, this will give us 432. For February, it's basically 9 times 36 will give us 324. So from here, the total of April and May is basically, what's the total that we have? 2175. Okay, and then we minus January, which is 432, minus February, which is 324, minus March is 576. That will give us 843. So now we know the total of April and May. Then we can have the average, which is the total of April and May, divided by 2, which is 843 divided by 2. And this will give us 421.5. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer for question 9b, part 2. Question 10. Alan, Ben, and Chandra shared the cost of a gift. The ratio of Alan's share to the total share of Ben and Chandra was 1:3. The ratio of Ben's share to the total share of Alan and Chandra was 1:5. Chandra's share was $80 more than Ben's share. How much did the gift cost? So in this case, we can actually create a table and we can just put according to what we see over here. So the ratio of Alan's share to the total of Ben's share. So in this case, I'm also going to write down A is to B plus C. In this case over here is the same. Right? So which is 1:3. Then after that, the next part is the ratio of Ben's share to the total of Alan and Chandra is equal to 1:5. So same thing. Ben, Alan plus Chandra 1 is to 5. So the thing is that all of them have the same total. Yes, right? In this case, A plus B plus C, the total will then be equal to 4, and the total will then be equal to 6. Since they have the same total, that means we need to find the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6, which in this case is 12. So that means 4 times 3 is equal to 12. We need to multiply everything by 3, then for this part. So this will be 9. Sorry, this will be 3. This will be 9. So but for the second combination is 1 times 2 because it's 6 times 2 over here. Go to 12. Then this will be 5 times 2. This will be 10. So that means since they have the same total, this case, the final will look something like this. So that means we know A is 3 units, B is equal to 2 units, C will then be equal to, you can say 10 minus, so it's A plus C, right? So it's 3, so A 3 equals to 7 units. So from here, the next statement says Chandra share was $80 more than Ben. So that means Chandra minus Ben equal to $80. Chandra, how much do we have? 7 units. Minus Ben is equal to 2 units equal to $80. So that means 5 units equal to $80. 1 unit will be 85. This will be $6. So the next question is, how much did the gift cost? Gift cost basically the total in terms of units will then be equal to 12 units. So 12 units, which is total, equal to 12 times 16. And this will be equal to $192. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. Question 11, part A. The number of boys and girls taking part in a quiz are in the ratio 7 is to 4. These students are put into two groups. 30% of the boys and 60% of the girls are in group P. The rest of the students are in group Q. What is the ratio of number of students in group P is to group Q? Give your answer in the simplest form. So from this, know that boys go to 7 units and girls is equal to 4 units. So these students are put into two groups. So 30% of the boys, 60% of the girls are in group E. So group E, we just put this part in. So 30% of the boys and 60% of the girls are in group. So group P boys go to 30% of boys. In this case, 30% times 7 units. This will be equal to 2.1 unit. So next one is group E girl equal to 60% of girl is equal to 60% times, and then we have 4 units over here. This will be equal to 2.4 units. So that means total group E then be 2.1 plus zero point 0.4. This will be 4.5. Then total group Q will then be this, right? 7 plus 4. 7 units plus 4 units go to 11 units. So this total group or total students, not total group Q. So that means total group Q would then be total students minus total group E, and this will be equal to 11 minus 4.5 will be 6.5 units. So the question asks, what is the ratio of the number of students in E to group Q? E is Q is E over here is 2.4. Sorry, not 2.4, 4.5. 4.5 to 0.5. So the thing is that can't put decimal place. So that means we need to, that means divide by number. So that means P and Q 4 and 5, 6.5, we multiply 2, this will be then be 9, 13. Okay, there you go. So the answer is 9 is to 13. So question 11 part B, the number of boys in group P is fewer than 70. What is the largest possible number of students taking part in the quiz? So we know that group P boys is 2.1 unit. We need to then find a where it can be visible by 2.1. So let's say 2.1 unit go to, let's go from, need to find largest whole number that is less 70 where can be divisible by 2. In this case, so then 39 divided by 2.1 equal to 3.2857. Wrong. So in a way, you kind of have to brute force this, right? So that means this is 30, right? So that means the total group P boys, the number of boys fewer than 70. So this is the largest. Will then be, so that means 2.1 units is equal to 63. 1 unit will then be equal to 63 divided by 2.1 will be 30. Therefore, the total, this case, the total number students will then be 11 units, 4 units, go to 11 units. So that means we will have 11 units total. 11 times 30, this will be 330. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. Question 12, part A. The figure is made up of 3 rectangles. A straight line drawn across the rectangles divides the figure into 2 parts, shaded and unshaded. The parameter of the shaded is 4 centimeters longer than the parameter of the unshaded. What is the length of AB? So how do we do this? So for this part, what we can do is we can move this, I would say, shaded parts to the left side. I think I can do it to here. Or then same thing as this part over here. The lines are like this. Then this part will then be moved up like that. So essentially, the whole shaded part actually looks something like this. Okay. So I just want to focus on the parameter. So we know that the parameter of the shaded part is 4 centimeters longer than the parameter of the unshaded part. What does this mean? Okay, so in essence, this part over here then be equal to this part over here. Then this part over here will be equal to this part over here. So the difference, one block, and we have that means this is the difference. So these 2 blocks are the difference. So if you were to look at the figure over here, the breadth over here, because for the lengths, we can just cancel them out because they are the same. So for the breadth, for the unshaded, it is AB. For the shaded, it is AB as well. So we just move like this, is AB, plus 2 of the same, I would say, distance remaining. I call it 2 green lengths. So I see over here. So this is the difference. So difference will then be just be equal to 2 green length. Then from the question, the parameter of the shaded is 4 centimeters longer than the unshaded. Means that the difference in terms of shaded and unshaded here then be 4 centimeters. So 2 green lengths is 4 centimeters. Because yeah, the difference are the same. It's just that so 1 green length 4 divided. This will give us 2 centimeters. So therefore, to find AB, AB is basically the whole thing over here, 7 plus 3 plus 3 minus 2. So the length of figure B, basically 7 plus 3 plus 3, and we minus 2 will give us A. There you go. So the answer for AB over here is 11. So question 12 part question 12 part B, what is the area of the unshaded part? So to get the shaded part, I've drawn out the 2 other shapes, right? Is this blue rectangle and this green rectangle. So basically, if we can get the whole rectangle over here, this red rectangle, or this whole rectangle, and then we minus off the unshaded triangle and the blue rectangle and the green rectangle, then we can get the shaded part. So for this, you can just write down for the shaded part is whole rectangle minus unshaded triangle, this white part, minus green rectangle minus blue rectangle. So the first thing is, let's find out the whole rectangle. You see, which is 180 length times breadth. So you just calculate the length 2 plus 4 plus 8 and the breadth 3 plus 3 plus 7, and this will give you 182. And the second part is we want to find the unshaded triangle. So half times base times height. So half of this base 2 plus 4 plus 8 times height. Earlier we calculated is 11 for A and B. That will be 77. Then the next part is we want to find the green rectangle over here. So the green rectangle is pretty straightforward. It's just 2 times 3, and this will be 6 centimeters square. Then for the blue rectangle, we need the length, which is, if you calculate 2 plus 4, which is 6. So this will be 6, and the length and breadth, so it will be 6 times 7 for the blue rectangle, and this will give us 42. Therefore, the shaded part over here will then be equal to the whole rectangle, 182, minus the unshaded triangle, 77, minus the green rectangle and the blue rectangle, and this will give us 57 centimeters square. Okay, there you go. That's the answer for question 12b. Question 13 part A. ABCD is a trapezium with AB parallel to the C. AFB and EFC are straight lines, and AE is equal to EB. EBC is 94 degrees. Find angle BCE. So angle BCE is this red angle over here. So how do you find this red angle? So this red angle is part of this triangle, also BCE. So in this case, can we find out BCE from this? We can. So angle BE is basically 180 minus 94 minus 28. The angles in a triangle, and it will be equal to 58 degrees. There you go. So this angle in triangle, okay, pretty straightforward. So question 13 part B, find angle AEC, which is this great angle over here. So how do you find angle AEC? So for this, so what's angle AEC part of? So AEC is actually part of this triangle over here, AEB. What is it over here? So it's part of triangle AEB. So the thing also is that from the question, AE is equal to EB, which makes triangle AB is an isosceles triangle. So which means if you were to figure out one of the angles, in this case, let's say angle EBA or EBF. So that means angle AEC is equal to 180. No. So I mean, before that, we need to also figure out this other angle. So I'm going to put it in blue. One. So AEC is basically the blue angle. So angle AEB minus 28. So this is blue. So angle AEB, which is in blue, is equal to 180 minus. So the EBF, EBA, so it's basically 2 times of EBF, angle EBF in purple. Okay, so then from here, how do we get this purple angle? So this purple angle, we just need to find out this green angle over here. So angle FBC, or this green angle, basically EBF purple is equal to 94, is this whole thing over here, right? So this whole thing is 94. So 94 minus the green angle over here. So then how do we get this green angle over here? What is this green angle part of? So this green angle is actually part of this trapezium ABCD. So which means angle, and we also know that AB in this case is parallel to BC. So which means to get this green angle, we need to find this orange angle over here. So FBC is equal to 180 minus angle BCB in orange. So are we able to find orange? Yes, we can. So in the earlier question, we were figuring out this angle over here, which is 58. So from question 38, A is 58. So which means in this case, this is also 58. Therefore, the angle FBC, or the orange angle BCB, is equal to 58 plus 53, and this will be equal to 111. So now we know that this orange angle is 111. Therefore, we can get a green angle is basically 180 minus 111, and this will be equal to 69. So once you know the green angle is 69, then we can find out the purple angle. So the purple angle is basically 94 minus 69, and this will be equal to 25. And since we know the purple angle is 25, then we can find out the blue angle over here. So the blue angle is 180 minus 2 times of the purple is basically 180 minus 2 times 25, and this will be 130 degrees. So that means we can find the red angle over here, which in this case is 130 minus 28, and this will give you 102 degrees. So there you go. The answer is 102 degrees. Question 13 part C. Circle the words that describe AFCD is in red over here. So AFCD over here, do you think this is a parallelogram? So if AFCD is a parallelogram, that means AFD is 125. Well, however, the thing is that, so AF 125. So angle AFC, if parallelogram, AFC, if parallelogram is equal to 180, that's 53. And this is equal to 127. So since FC is not equal to ADC, which is 125 degrees, then AFCD not a parallelogram but a trapezium. Therefore, we know from the question it says AFB is this whole line over here is parallel. So that means this is parallel to DC. That is correct. Since AFB is parallel to DC, that means AF is parallel to DC, since AFB is a straight line. Okay, so in this case, you can say since AF is parallel to DC and AD is not parallel to FC, therefore AFCD is a trapezium. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. Question 14 part A. The table shows the prices of tickets for a concert. So the adult is $16. Adults above 60 years old is 11, and child costs $7. Number of adult tickets sold was 5 times the number of child's tickets sold. 5/8 of the adults sold were for adults aged below 60 years. A total of $5,589 was collected from the sale of tickets. What fraction of the tickets sold were for adults aged 60 years and above? Give your answer in the simplest form. So it says here the number of tickets sold was 5 times the number of child tickets sold. So that means adult is 5 units and child is 1 unit. Then the next statement, it says 5/8 of the adults were for below 60 years old. So in this case, adult that is below 60 years would then be 5/8 times 5 units. This would then be 25 out of 8 units, or in this case, 1 out of 8 units. So what fraction of the tickets sold were for adults aged 60 years and above? So adult above 60 years old. So that means the adult above 60 is, adult below 60 from the statement 5/8 is just 5/8, the fraction. Then adults above 60 years old in terms of fraction would then be equal to 1 minus 5/8, and the answer is 3/8. So if I were to get the number of units from this, which is basically the total 5 units from the adults, as we mentioned earlier over here, 5 units times 3/8, then be 15 out of 8 unit. Gonna leave it at mixed number. So what is the fraction of the 60 years old and above? So that means the fraction is 15/8 divided by 6. So which means 8 times 1/6 will then be 15/48. We simplify this, divided by 3, this will be 5/16. Right, there you go. So that's the answer, 5/16. So part B, what was the total number of tickets sold? So from the statement, 5 out of 8 adult tickets sold were for adults aged below 60 years old. So in this case, what I want to do is to have one group of adults is 8 adult tickets. And because from the fraction it says 5/8, right? So we have one group that is 8 adult tickets. So 8 adult tickets is basically 5 tickets that is below 60 years. Because it says here 5/8 is 60 years. And then 3 tickets is above 60 years. Then the next part is the number of adult tickets sold was 5 times the number of child tickets sold. So since the child is, in this case, to total adults is 1:5, and then we have 8, right? Since our one group of adults have 8 tickets, and the questions say that we have 5 times more than the child, that means we need to get the lowest common multiple of 5 and 8, which in this case is 40. So therefore, child tickets to adult tickets, we times 8 times 8. This will be 8 is to 40 tickets. So that means one group of adults is 8 adult tickets. 5 group of adults equal to 5 times 8, which is 40 adult tickets, something like this. And then 40 adult tickets, so 60 years above, then be 5/8 times 40. This will give us 25 tickets. Then 60 years below is 3/8, which means this is 15 tickets. So one group will then be equal to 8 child plus 25 adult above 60 years plus 15 adult, which is below 60 years. Means we can just calculate from here. So 8 times 7 plus 25 times 11 plus 15 times 16. Sorry, this one should be below. This one should be above. So that means below, this is above. So it's 25 times 16 and 15 times 11. So this will be a total of $621. So one group number of tickets is equal to 8 plus 25 plus 15. This will be 48. So number of groups then be total collected divided by one group cost, which is 5589 divided by 621 will be equal to 9. So total tickets then be number of groups times one group number of tickets, which is essentially 9 times one group of tickets is 48. This will give us 432 tickets. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. Question 15, part A. Helen and Ivan have the same total number of coins. Helen has a number of 50-cent coins and 64 20-cent coins. The total mass of her coins is 1.134 kilograms. Ivan has a number of 50-cent and 104 20-cent coins. How much more does the richer person then have than the other? Since the question says Helen and Ivan have the same total number of coins, let's assume each have 105 coins. Reason for 105 coins is because Ivan has 104 20, then so in this case it's easier be as close to the highest number of 20 cent coin. Okay, so for this we will then just put for Helen as a number of 50-cent coins and 64 20-cent coins. So that means 104. So the Helen total is equal to 104. So Helen descent would then be equal to 104 minus 64. Sorry, Helen total is 105. 105 minus 64, this will be 41. And we know that the 20-cent coins, it's equal to 54. So that means total Helen total value, in this case total coin, will then be, so the total value will be cents times 64 plus 50 cents times 41. So it's 3300 cents, which in this case is dollars 33.30 cents. Then we're gonna do the same with Ivan. So Ivan over here, total coins will then be 105. So Ivan 20-cent coins is 104, and then Ivan 50-cent is 105 minus 104. This will just be 1. So Ivan total will then be 104. 20 cents times 104 plus 50 cents times 1, and that will be equal to 2,130, or in this case $21.30. So the difference basically $33.30 minus $21.30. This will give us $12. So you might be thinking, okay, let's say what if I change this number to 200? What would then this look like? So in this case, Helen total will not be 105. It will then be 200. So Helen 20-cent coins remain the same as 64. But the 50-cent coins is 200 minus 64 is 136. Therefore, the total value will then be equal to $80.80. Then for Ivan, we will then just do the same. Ivan total is 200. That means Ivan 50 cents is 96. Cost 20 cents is the same. Total value is actually $68.80. So do you think the difference is the same? So if I were to put the two numbers together, minus each other, $80.80 minus $68.80, it actually gives us $12. Okay, let's try out another number. Let's assume the coins is 133, some odd number. Do you think the difference is the same? So if you were to put Helen total coins as 133, that means 50-cent coins is 69. Therefore, Helen total is $47.30. And Ivan's total, or Ivan will then be total coins 133, 50-cent coins is 29. Ivan total is $35.30. Do you think the difference is the same? Let's see. The difference for Helen is $47.30 minus $35.30, and it's still $12. So what does this prove? It proves that no matter how much the number of total coins that we have, if the 20-cent coins for Ivan and Helen remains the same, and we also have the same total number of coins for Helen and Ivan, then that means the difference will always be the same. Okay, there you go. So that is how you do this question. So there you go. So that's the answer for question 15. Alright, so question 15 part B. Each 50-cent coins is 2.7 grams heavier than each 20-cent coin. What is the total mass of Ivan's coins in kilograms? So in this case over here, I've drawn a model, and we know that for Helen, she has 64 20-cent coins. So Helen over here has 64 20-cent coin. Then for Ivan over here, he has 104 20-cent coins. So Ivan has 104 20-cent coins. But if you want to break it up into blocks, it will be 64 and 40. So this will be very important. So the thing is that we know that both of them have the same total number. So in this case over here, that means this whole thing will look something like this, where you have 15-cent coins as well. That's what you see over here. So that means, right, for the 20-cent coins that Ivan has more than Helen, it is replaced with 40 50-cent coins that Helen has. So the thing is, we know that both have a number of 50-cent coins. Then the thing is that the leftover, well then I'll call it 1 unit over here. So the thing is that if you were to just focus on the difference, so let's say I can just cancel out the difference. For the difference, you will then just have Helen and Ivan. So we cancel out this, because that is the same. So that means the difference between Helen and Ivan is actually, so difference between Helen and Ivan is 40 coins of 50 cents and 20 cents. And the thing is that since one difference of 150-cent coin is 2% heavier than 120-cent coin, that means 40 coins difference would then be 40 times 2.7, and this will give us 108 grams, or in this case, go to convert 108 grams into kilograms. So 108 divided by 1000, this will be 0.108 kilogram. So 40 coins difference, or difference between Helen and Ivan, right? So that means Ivan has 0.18 kg heavier coins than Helen. So, and since we know Helen from the question, it says the total mass of her Helen coins is 1134. So Ivan will then be equal to 1.134 plus 0.108. This will then be equal to, sorry, it's not heavier, it is lighter than the coins, right? Because Ivan has 40 20-cent coins, which is lighter. So we minus in. So 134 minus 0.108. This will give us 1.026 kilogram. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. Question 16, part A. A small circle with center O has been cut for a circular piece of cardboard with the same center. The radius of the small circle is 8 centimeters. The remaining cardboard is then cut into 4 equal parts along the dotted lines as shown in figure 1. The 4 parts are rearranged to form a new shape in figure 2. Find the area of the new shape. So we know from this, the radius of the small circle, 8 centimeters, is this part over here. So the radius here is 8. So the thing is that the radius of this quarter circle is 8, right? So this will be the same as if you were to transfer it to over here. So this is 8. And same thing if we were to transfer it over here as such, like this. Then the thing is that this 8 over here is also in the small circle, which means that this would then be like this radius. So the thing is that since we know this part, then the empty part in the middle over here, or this green space over here, can find out. Reason of why we want this green space over here is because we need this green space to find out the radius of the big circle. So area of new shape didn't change from figure 1 to figure 2. So that means figure 1 area would then be equal to big circle minus small circle. So from here, we need to find out, we can find out the small circle, right? Small circle area is basically pi times radius times radius. So we know the radius. So for the pi over here, it's 3.14 times radius is 8 times 8. This would then be 296. So we want to find the big circle. We also need to find the big circle radius, which is basically 8 plus green space, right? So the big circle radius is in purple, right? So the green space, so from figure 2, 42 is equal to 8 plus green space, or green line. I would say green line. Green line plus 8 plus 8 plus green line plus 8. So essentially, 2 green line is equal to 42 minus 8 times 4. And in this case, it will be 10. So 1 green line will then be equal to 10 divided by 2, and this will be 5. Since we know the green line is 5, then we can find the big circle radius, which is 8 plus 5, which is 13 centimeters. So therefore, we can find out the big circle area, which is 3.14 times 13, and this will give us, so this is big circle, 530.66. So last one, figure 1 area is basically big circle minus small circle, which is 530.66 minus small circle over here, 200.96, and this will give us 329.7 centimeters square. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. So question 16, part B, find the parameter of the new shape. So the parameter of the new shape, okay, essentially we need to get a couple of things. So first is we need to get the outer area, which is 1 and 2, and we have another one, another quarter, and another. So change this into pink. So figure 2 parameter is equal to 1 quarter radius of big plus half radius, half 1/4 big, half of big plus 1/4 big, plus then we have 1/4 small plus half of small plus 1/4 small. Then plus there's two more things. This one will be 2, 1 here, and 2 times the blue line. So essentially it is 1 big plus 1 small plus 2 blue line. So 1 big will then be 2 times pi times radius. So we know the big radius over here is 13. So 2 times 3.14 times 13. This will be 81.64. Oh yes. Then we want to get a small one. 1 small, 2 pi. The radius is 8, 50.24. And then lastly, we have the blue lines over here. So we know that earlier this green line, 5 and 5, which makes this line over here 5. Earlier is 5. Is into green instead of. So therefore, we know the parameter. So figure 2 parameter would then be equal to 1 big, 1 small, and green line makes it 81.64 plus 50.24 plus times 5. This will be equal to 141.88 centimeters. Okay, there you go. Question 17, part A. The figure shows taps A and B and an empty tank. At 2 p.m., tap A was turned on. Water flowed into the tank from tap A at a rate of 4.2 liters per minute. After 5 minutes, tap B was turned on. At 2:15 p.m., the tank was half filled with water. How many liters of water flowed out of tap B in 1 minute? So in essence, we just want to know the concept of the water flow out. If there is water coming in as well, right? The water coming in, then water coming out. So to get water flowed out from tap B, we need to know the total liters of water flowed out. So total liters of water flowed out is basically equal to total water filled minus total water left. So how do we know the total water left? Is this. At 2:15 p.m., the tank was half filled. So total water left is basically half of tank is half times volume is half times 55 times 20 times 30. This will be 16,500 centimeter cube. So that's total water left. So we want to know total water field. So total water field in this sense is basically total time times tap A rate. So what's the total time? This case from this 2 to 2:15 p.m. is 2:15 p.m. minus 2:00 p.m. go to 15 minutes. Then we know tap A rate, right? So total water field is total time 15 times tap A rate, which is 4.2, and this will be equal to 63 liters, or in this case 63,000 liters. We can put this liters first. So that means I want to convert this into liters, 15.5. Okay, so now we know the total water field and the total water left. We can find out the total water or total liters of water flowed out. It's basically total water field 63 minus 3 minus 16.5. This will give us 46.5 liters. Okay, here what is the time, number of minutes tap B turned on. So in this case at 2 p.m. for 5 minutes. This case at 2 p.m. dot dot dot. After 5 minutes tap B. So that means tap B turned on was 2 plus 2 p.m. plus 5 minutes. This will be equal to 2.05 p.m. So that means number of minutes turned on is 2:15 p.m. minus 2:05 p.m. is 10 minutes. So now we can find the rates of tap B. Okay, basically what is this? 46.5 liters divided by 10 minutes. This will be equal to 4.65 liters per minute. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. So question 17, part B. At 2:30 p.m., what fraction of the tank was filled with water? So we know from the previous question that tab B flows out 4.65 liters per minute and tab A is 4.2 liters per minute. So that means every minute how many water is or liters are, or since rate tab of tab B is higher than rate of tab A, that means the water is continuously decreasing. So that means constant water flow out per minute will then be 4.65 minus 4.2, and this will be 0.45 liters per minute. So from number of minutes from 2:15 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. is equal to 15 minutes. So total water flow out will then be 15. So this is after 2:15 2 p.m. will be 15 minutes times 0.45 liters minute, and this will be 6.75 liters. So water remaining in at 2:30 p.m. will then be half of water minus 6.75 liters. So do you know half of water? Yes, we do. 16.5 liters. Okay, 16.5 minus 6.75. This will be equal to 9.75 liters. So fraction of water filled left in this case is 9.75 divided by, so we know half the tank is 16.5. So full tank will then be 16.5 times 2. This will be 33. So 9.75 divided by 33 or fraction like this. So we can just times 2. It will be 19.5 divided by 6 times 2 again. This will be 39 over 132. And then we divide by 3. This will be 13 out of 44. So there you go. The answer is 13 out of 44. That's it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want more of this kind of video, subscribe down below. Comment down what other things you want me to show you next. In the next one, bye bye.